Hello, friends, and welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast, where we focus on optimizing the well-being and best practices of insurance and financial professionals today. On this show, our objective is to help you optimize your life, optimize your profession, and learn from other optimized advisors. I'm your host, Scott Heinela. We hope you enjoy the show. Hello, Brian. Welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Scott, thanks for having me, man.
So, Brian Church, Advisory DNA. First and foremost, just talk a little bit about your background, your experience, and then we can dive a little bit into Advisory DNA, who you are, who you serve, what you do.
Yeah. Well, I've been in the business since '97 as an intern for Putnam Investments up in Boston. I was their only Southerner, so they logically sent me down to wholesale in the southern states. I think when I first came down, I covered 6 or 7 states. So been in the business now 24, 25 years. Done a lot of different things. Was a wholesaler, started a de novo scratch financial planning office here eventually that was under the Securian Minnesota Life banner here in Nashville, Franklin, Brentwood area with a gentleman named Jim Shoemaker's mentor of mine. And we built a pretty nice office over 5 years and about 18 advisors. And, then moved on, from that business.
What year was that?
Oh, wow. That was probably 2008.
Okay.
When we moved on from there, and still that office is still there today. And so what I realized, and some of the things that we help advisors with today, is that I really enjoyed the recruiting, the M&A piece, and the consulting piece, the organic growth, the inorganic growth of building advisors. What I didn't like was managing people. And when you work with financial advisors, often you're managing volunteers.
Right.
And so, but really what I loved doing was that the recruiting, M&A, creating momentum around relationships, consulting from an enterprise value creation, organic and inorganic growth perspective, and helping to build destination firms. So that's what we still do today. I've been doing that under the same company, branded 3 different ways over the last, you can imagine that, probably 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But has led me to be able to work with some of the finest organizations on the planet in our business. And some of the biggest firms out there. Did work for 8 years with United Capital, and then it became Goldman Sachs, PFM, and then some of the smallest, most amazing companies I think on the planet that are true destination firms that may not have the size of United Capital, but have what I like to call enterprise and operational maturity, and really are destination firms. And happy to go through how we define that later on as well. So, but that's what I've been doing, and we love doing it, but we want to be very intentional in the way that we do it. And that's why we've built what we have.
So Advisory DNA was born when?
About 11 and a half years ago.
Okay. All right. Very good. And you were saying that's the third iteration?
It's the third iteration of it as a hapless entrepreneur. And I've started several other companies along the way, wrote a few books, even a couple good ones. But yeah, so we've been around for more than a decade. We've been blessed to be able to serve over 160 different transitions and transactions over that period of time. Yeah.
So what books have you authored? Share with our audience of that.
Well, so authored 3, I've written 7. And thank God I've got people in my life that will be honest with me when I've written something, or I'm trying to do something or start a company that is just really not a great idea.
As opposed to just telling you what you want to hear.
Right. Yeah. And so 4 have never hit the light of day. Thank God. And the first one that I wrote is something called Relationship Momentum, which was basically how to make your ideas and your relationships move. Momentum and what I like to call organizational or relationship physics is just as real as the physics of holding a shoe and letting it drop to the floor. There are irrefutable laws of building relationships and building momentum. That happens in recruiting, happens in deal flow, happens in succession of practices. It's a very real, tangible thing. And so I tried to build some science around it and worked with some really smart people. I failed physics in high school, true story. So I tried to build some real physics around it in an equation, a relationship momentum equation, which P equals mv is momentum equals mass times velocity, but changing that into relationship momentum being E cubed V sub S. And the mass circling around these three relational equities that you have to build to move anything forward. I don't care if you're trying to date or a future mate, or you literally are going through a recruiting, new client origination, or mergers, acquisition, or succession process. It's really the same. You're looking for inertia.
Yeah. Well, you think about just the relationships within financial planning practice or wealth management firm. Its nucleus is centered around relationships from the advisor to the customer, relationships within the practice and the internal staff, relationships with the vendors that an advisor uses. The entire nucleus and world exists around relationships. And so if you can crack that code of creating momentum, I would think, the sky's the limit.
Well, and I think there's a formula to it. There is no silver bullet, but there's a formula to it. And so that book is probably my favorite. It got endorsed by Damon John of Shark Tank and FUBU. But as I tell people, it was read by dozens of people around the world. So it wasn't a booming success, but it's still my favorite book. And then the second book that I wrote, I was actually speaking in a speaking engagement somewhere, and I often draw allusions or use metaphors and comparisons with that of Disney. And a gentleman that was sitting in the back of the room at one of the talks, and he came forward at the end and introduced himself, and he was Disney's first service excellence coordinator. And so what Disney is really, really great at, they're great at so many different things, but in my humble opinion, what they're great at is creating those relational experiences that are irreplaceable. And literally, they've created a fantasy land and own rent in people's heads because they're so good at that. And so he and I wrote a book under the Wiley banner out of Hoboken. So great publisher there. And that did really well. So that ended up being an international bestseller and still selling books today. And we got to consult and speak for a lot of companies, and was really fantastic. But the thing I cherished most about it was the time I spent with Bruce Leffler, the Disney's first service excellence coordinator, and the time we spent at Disney doing research, and just an unforgettable experience. And I learned more than anybody could ever learn from my book. But
that's very interesting, because you think about Disney for a moment. And you've cited twice now this person who is tasked with service excellence, and under the layers, that would have to be true. However, I would also put Disney up there with their paramount goal in customers and serving their customers is, creating transformational experiences as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's like, what's the service excellence versus transformational experiences within a practice? A lot of that is directly applicable to that of an advisory firm.
It completely is. And we work, Advisory DNA doesn't do this. We have a company called Experience Global that works with financial advisory firms in that genre. And you're exactly right. Look, the service aspects are really about processes, systems, attention. But then the relational experiences are the intentional aspects of one person to another and what they're willing to do. And it's a different side of the business, right? Some is art, some is science, but it's that art form of helping people understand that you really do care, right?
Mm-hmm. And what was that book?
To do it. So that was called The Experience.
Oh, The Experience. Okay.
Yeah, The Experience. It's the 5 principles of Disney service and relational excellence. And so I think you can, that's available anywhere, right? It's available still at bookstores, and certainly can get that at Amazon or Barnes and Noble online. So it's still there.
That's
and
great.
then the third one, just very quickly, was what we should have written first, which was insperience. And so we trademarked that. Insperience. If experience is showing other people that you care, what do you think insperience is? It's taking care of your own people. And as Walt Disney said, the way you treat your own people is the way they're going to treat your customers, clients, patients when you're not around. And that's one of his great quotes. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. So advisory DNA specifically, what is advisory DNA in its current form? How do you serve advisors, or who do you serve?
Yeah, well, so we really have two different clients. And DNA for me always meant something different than just, your own bio makeup, right?
Yeah.
BIOS side of who you were. It's really your values, your culture, your beliefs, how you feel about a business, the discipline aspect of it. What's great about our business is there's no one silver bullet, one way that's right to serve your clients. But, some people may run money a certain way. Some people are very behavioral, finance weighted towards their financial planning prowess. Some people are cash based, some people are goals based, right? There's so many different ways to serve people, but that makes up what we think is your DNA, along with the culture, along with the values aspects, the behavioral aspects as to how you communicate. All of those things make up the DNA of an advisor, of a practice owner, and of a firm. And so we developed a really unique way. We've really been doing this for well over a decade, but we just didn't have the technology in order to do this, to make it more data driven. We were doing it off of Excel spreadsheets for a long time. But then technology, or the better priced technology path of today, has allowed us to digitize a lot of that and scale it. But what we do really well, and we've trademarked this, we want advisors to live their best vocational life. First off is, how do you dig that out of somebody? Very akin to financial planning. We know the questions to ask to help you decipher, as an advisor, as a practice owner, as a firm owner. I don't care if you're $1 billion, $5 billion firm owner or group of owners, you still need to be asking these questions about what you're building. If you could build anything on earth and money was no issue, what you want in your own life, where does that cross section of life and work, and how that comes together. So we're very good at getting that out. And so what we do is we build these DNA profiles for advisors, practice owners, business owners, firm owners, and then give them that mosaic as to who they are as an individual or as an organization. And that is a free service that we provide, because we love having conversations with folks in the financial advisory industry. So the people that we're targeting, and we do both sides of that, are the owners, the advisors of the world that are thinking about what's next, transition, succession planning, exit planning. Doesn't matter. Everybody's different. Growth. They're looking for more organic growth, inorganic growth. It all starts with those questions. If you could build anything, what would you do? And how does your work life marry up to that vision, to that dream that you have? The other side of that is what we call the destination firms. These are the firms that we believe are qualified, and its size is not an issue here. I've seen firms at 100 million that have twice that of the enterprise level maturity of a $2 billion shop. Okay. So it's really about their design and what they want to build, in a couple of unique criteria. And we've been fortunate enough to build a mosaic of these firms across the industry that's north of 100 great firms of all shapes, sizes, cultures, values, RIA, hybrid, really doesn't matter. We've got such a large ecosystem that we've procured over time. So those destination firms and those practice business firm owners that are contemplating what's next are the two different types of firms that we serve. to bring together mutually accretive relationships in the form of a transition, looking for a new firm for growth purposes or economics, succession planning, which I know you and I will go into more today, exit planning. And then we take a really unique process that starts with discovery, moves into the second phase, which is advice and guidance around the pathway that you may take. And then last but not least, it's the art form of what we think and what we know about the ecosystem matched with data-driven analytics for alignment, and to make sure that there aren't things that you miss during that process. It's kind of akin to an investment banking process, even if someone is looking for succession, or they're looking to sell their firm, or they're even looking to transition firms. I mean, a transaction doesn't have to happen in order to go through a very mature art and science-based process that's very intentional to end up on the other side of it with a choice of a final destination.
So you mentioned, expanding on technology, and that's something that certainly has provided you, opportunity of growth, and I would say catapulted your organization from a scalable standpoint. So we talk a little bit about from a tech stack standpoint, or you mentioned the word digitizing your business. Talk a little bit more about that and how that has transitioned over the years, and not to share, the secret ingredients per se, but on the surface, how has technology really benefited your firm in specific ways? And from that also, what do you see the future holding with firms like yours?
Yeah. Good question. So first off, I mean, think about what this all goes back to: relational momentum. Recruiting, M&A, succession planning is about momentum.
Yeah.
And what slows that down, right? A lack of trust, and a lack of organization, a lack of understanding of what's out there in the ecosystem that's even available to you, right? I mean,
just know-how. I mean, where do I even go? Where do I begin? Who do I talk to?
right.
Those are great points.
And so what we've tried to do is to streamline that process. This is a very human process, but you can streamline it. So this isn't a portal that you go to and you're trying to just find a match. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what people like, I mean, there's things like, Zillow out there, and you got TripAdvisor, and those are great for people going on trips or wanting to buy homes.
Mm-hmm.
For people that want more of a human process, it can be scaled by technology and bettered through technology, much like the financial planning process has. You look at that evolution over time.
Mm-hmm.
So we take a very human approach, but what the digitization of that is in being able to create a syndicate of different opportunities, and to be able to look at those opportunities, sometimes all in one page, and how the analytics come together, and how your blueprint, your DNA profile overlaps with another, and being able to see that itemized, but also to be able to see that in picture form, and to visualize that helps. It creates momentum, or a lack thereof, or a vacuum. And that's what we're looking for, is to create momentum early on in the process. But what it also does is it organizes the process. So our software is used by the destination firms. Okay, they have their portal, and then also used by what we call the DNA practices that could be 2 billion in size or be 20 million, for them to go in to see where they are in the process the entire time. Or let's talk about succession. So someone that contracts with us to go find their successor, not only are we going to go and do the lead generation, make sure that they're a fit and in alignment from a compatibility standpoint using our analytics platform, but we're also going to manage the process so they can see where these folks are, how many different candidates that they have, how they align, and where they are in the process, at the same time allowing those candidates to see exactly where they are in the process, and being able to do that discreetly. So we've, understanding the business, we've learned how to do this over time, still a human process with human guidance and advice, but then also scaling the alignment, the compatibility, the analytics side of this, and then the process of never losing momentum, because people know exactly where they are, right? That's a big deal in relational physics and relationship momentum, dealing with recruiting, succession, exit planning, selling your business, anything, in that genre. So
Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting. So you keep referencing destination firms. Can you dive deep? Let's unpack that a little bit. What are some of the specifics or the makeup that define a destination firm?
well, I'll talk about that in two different ways. The first one is and it's a lot bigger than this, but four simple criteria, top level. Is first off, you have to have created a client experience that is very accretive and different, not different for difference sake, but you're really offering value to the client. And so I'll come back around to that in a second.
I would say unique, and the ability to define what makes you unique and differentiates you from other firms.
Yes, that's right. So you have to be attractive to clients. And there's another part of that too, is that you have to be able to find ways to go and get them. There has to be, and I wouldn't call it just pure lead gen, but something a little bit greater than just saying, well, we grow organically through referrals, that we actually have an organic system and process that will generate new opportunities to serve people and new revenue, right?
So it's twofold, both the ability to be able to articulate, but also having the substantive, tangible workflow, processes, environment within your firm that solidifies that.
Well, and making sure the emperor has clothes, not just being able to attract them,
Well
but
said.
to actually have a great value proposition. So
Right.
that's number one, and there is no substitute for that. Without that, you can't come to the party. The second one is that most people don't realize how symbiotic that of client experience and advisor experience is. They're completely symbiotic. You can't have one without the other. So the second one is that advisor experience. And are you attractive to advisors, okay, from a cultural and scale perspective, as well as employees, right? So support employees as well. You have to be attractive, to those people. The third part is that you have to have some semblance of enterprise maturity. So that's the entire tech stack. That is your systems, your processes. Think of the difference between a business or a closely held business, a business or a sole proprietorship, a lifestyle type operation, and that of an enterprise. What does an enterprise denote? It denotes that there's interdependence there, that it's not a one woman, one man show. And that's where all of the personality and that's where all of the secret sauce is in the business, is that it's transferable. You have to be able to have that and to be a true destination firm. But you don't have to have it all solved, right? You could be on your way there, and then some people are further down the road than others. And then there's folks at 35 billion in assets that are world renowned, and their brand is known from coast to coast or around the world. And they haven't arrived yet. They're still on a mission to continue to increase enterprise excellence.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because our good friend Norm Trainer, who I know in the business,
Yep.
He says one of the first major milestones that an advisor or their practice gets to, the split in the road, is, do I continue being an income producer? And there's phenomenal income producers.
Yep.
That's not a negative. It's a deliberate decision that you come to, and you make that decision, or you become a business builder. Now, what you're saying, really, what I'm extracting is that destination firm is almost like the pinnacle goal of becoming a business builder. And how am I going to build this business to become an enterprise? And from an enterprise, we ultimately achieve this destination firm criteria.
Yeah, and that's really the capstone, is the fourth part. So just to recap, those is client experience and being able to attract them. Second is advisor and employee experience. Third is being, having that enterprise operational maturity. Then the last one is something different. It's having the capacity. Okay, you got systems, but do you have the capacity and the advocacy and all of those other three to envelop other advisors, whether you're purchasing them, they're transitioning into you, or you're succeeding them, right? And that is kind of I say it's the fourth, it's the capstone, it's kind of the concoction of the first three. But I know some that are in the first three that think they want to buy firms, or they think they want to recruit advisors, but are still not completely ready for that yet, right? And that overlay there a lot of the times is cultural. So that's what we mean by a destination firm. Some of our destination firms, we're introducing people to. Some of them we consult for them directly, but we've procured well over 100 firms that we would trust as a destination firm to think that they would be fertile soil for someone to attach themselves to.
And a pretty wide range of staff, revenue, whatever the metrics are that you want to hit. You don't need to be this significantly large firm or revenue hitting specific milestones within revenue to be a destination firm.
That's right. That's right. Well, and if that goes into our analytics and alignment. So a destination firm could be one of the bigs that out there today that are aggregators, and that might be a great destination for someone.
Yeah, and those would be the obvious ones. Trying to peel away the layers a little bit. Let's get to some that aren't the obvious. The gorillas out there, right?
Yeah. But what about the folks that are $250 million that really have something unique? Right, they're figuring out how to scale it. They're staffing up too. They haven't arrived, but they've got a unique lead generation program that's going to be transferable and is transferable right now. That could be a great destination. Sometimes geography plays into that. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. That doesn't matter. So it's really being able to find and live your best vocational life.
Right.
But having a pilot, someone to walk with you through that journey to provide you some advice and guidance that's not just human, it's backed up by some science, behaviorally and through alignment and compatibility analytics, but to walk that journey with you. And then on the other side, some of our destination firms in the platform may not be what you would call a pure destination firm that says, hey, we're going to go out and recruit advisors. We want to buy some firms. This may be somebody that, who knows, that could be at 50 million, have a nice practice, 100 million, 200 million, and they're looking for a successor. Or maybe they've gone through that a couple times and picked the wrong person.
Right.
That's where we can come alongside them, provide advice and guidance, find the people for them, through our art and science process, and even negotiate. And one of the firms that we just worked with recently, there were 3 different partners were coming together. The other folks are not leaving the business yet, but probably have 5 to 7 years left. And we helped them come together and not only make sure that it was a positive for them, to help them develop the term sheet, which is always fun especially when you have 3 heads. And then last but not least, the integration mapping that goes on. And that's akin to post-marital counseling of, okay, now you've come together, you've signed your agreements. Now what's life going to be like after it? And what are those 95 points of inference that really aren't due diligence? It's beyond due diligence. It's now you're married, and which one of these do you want to tackle first? What are the ones that are force multipliers that are going to be fun? And where are the potholes that you better address?
So let's talk a little bit about succession today. To me, you almost have like 3 elements of succession. One would be, in the case of premature death, right? So what happens to my practice? How does it continue?
Continuity, right? So continuity there. Yeah.
The continuity plan, and then you've got disability. In the case of disability, what does that look? But then the succession of, well, when I'm ready to retire, how do I want to succeed my practice? What does the baton passing look like? And how do I go about that? What are let's just talk about some of the basics of that today. What are the absolute minimum requirements an advisor should have, work on, be prepared for? And then what are some of the challenges that we're facing today within dealing with this whole element of my practice?
Yeah. Well, so first off, just continuity is, so what happens if something happens to you, tomorrow, okay? And you can't answer the phone, right?
And I know it's a requirement, but let's be honest about that. To what extent have advisors really thought through this?
Yeah, it's a loose requirement, right? And which
exactly.
And don't get me wrong, it's not that it shouldn't have been made a requirement, but almost as dangerous is as not having the requirement is saying it's a requirement so someone can check a box. I hate to check the box because that doesn't cover everything.
Correct.
And so
another analogy would be in our practice and working with advisors, and in turn their clients, as many successful business owners with all different types of makeups and DNA. And all too often you ask the question, to that business owner, what is your succession plan? Do you have a buy-sell agreement in place? Oh yeah, we have that. It's covered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, really, let's take a look at that. Let's dive a little bit deeper. When was it amended? How often should it be amended? What were the valuations done? How often was the evaluation done? How was it valued? Many questions pertain to this, and I would say specifically to continuity plans as well as succession plans.
Yeah, you're spot on, Scott. And so, right, and is it funded? There's so many different questions that people have checked the box that I have a continuity plan, that my staff knows who to call. And it's like, so let me get this right. You're going to have a person that your clients have never heard of before, who is immediately going to maybe take over. That's the continuity side of it. And when I look at this, continuity is more about the clients than it is about the advisor. Because if all you have is just the continuity plan, wave bye-bye to 50% of the book within 9 months anyways.
Right.
But it's good that you at least have, and I think from a stewardship aspect, you've got to have an answer as to continuity. So what happens to my clients tomorrow? So continuity is for the advisor. It's really for the clients. Succession is for the clients and the advisor. And there's multiple ways to attack that. You may be thinking about leaving 5, 7, 10 years from now. You might be thinking about 1 to 3 years. You may not know. And just because you have a buddy that's also in the same business that your clients don't know, doesn't mean that the clients will long-term want to work with them. But even more so, this value that you've created in your business over time, as important as that may be to your kids, to your spouse, to whomever, to your team, right, that you're shepherding as well, you're not going to receive that value if you just check the box and you've got a succession plan because I got a guy down the street that's going to buy it. Okay, well, he's going to buy it for what? Is there any interdependency there that maximizes your valuation? Who is it going to? This is a major mistake I think some of our larger broker-dealer partners are making today, is that they have these nice continuity and succession plans, but they can't even tell you who it's attached to yet. Well, that doesn't sound like, end-to-end stewardship to me. And
how does the acquisition transaction occur? How are you going to pay for this?
Right. And so sometimes it's the large broker dealer. Sometimes it's I would never want to be on the acquiring end of a succession that there's no interdependency or true continuity involved, meaning the clients don't know me. There's not a repeatable system.
So give me an example of what one of those clauses would look like.
Yeah. So, well, what you would have, what you don't want to have is I'm paying 1 to 2.5x or somewhere in between for a business that the assets are not going to be sticky and the clients don't know me, and there's no advocacy in the handoff of the what I would call that is the chain of custody of the client, right? And so that's what you don't want to happen. The way that you can prepare for that is it's funded. So if it's funded by life insurance or it's funded in some other way, that you're able to buy the business, so the deceased owner or the owner that needed to leave the business quickly at least gets to monetize what they worked so hard to build.
Right.
Still, the gap there is, where's the advocacy in the interdependence nature of this? The new advisor coming in, does he know the clients? Is he or she going to continue to serve the clients in the same fashion that they were before? Could it be even better? So a lot of those things that go unanswered. So hopefully that give you an idea, of the clause. Succession, if done properly, should be a river, not a waterfall. It's not a cliff. It's something that happens over time. And I keep using this word advocacy. I know that's commonly used more in cooking or in ingredients, but it's true. It's what it is. It's the advocacy of that chain of command of custody of the client and the client relationship and the service deliverables and all of those continue at the same time, where the owner gets to maximize their value for something they poured their lifeblood into over the years. And also often the spouse, he or she has stood beside often working in the business of this entrepreneur in order to eventually monetize this one day, or to be that cash register that continues to output as they serve their clients. And so all of that can go sideways if you're not properly prepared.
So with the advisors and firms, destination firms and other enterprise firms that you're working with today, what's the high level landscape look like? Because, and let me dive into that a little bit. You have, I think, a whole subset of the advisor population that are aging, that are within, let's say, 5 years or maybe even 36 months. Maybe you have some better metrics on that, of retiring. And then you've got this, I would think, insurge of younger advisors obtaining their credentials, cutting their teeth in this survival mode, wanting and hungry to acquire firms and to grow their practices. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing today with the valuation of practices? I mean, there's been so much activity in the M&A space through financial services in the last 2-3 years. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. And so and that means competitiveness, right? So big firms buying up smaller firms, individual advisors buying up other individual advisors' practices. That moves. I mean, it's economics, right? So I think it's probably more than ever, maybe a pretty challenging space to be working in. And so that know-how, the time associated to needing to do that. I mean, there's a lot of elements that we can unpack and discuss through that. But what are you seeing in terms of just the challenges that firms or individuals are facing within acquisition?
Yeah. Well, first thing is that it's a very active and live market right now with more buyers than there are sellers. That logically will change over time as the market.
Just like the real estate market, huh?
I just sold both of our homes because of the ridiculous prices that are out there, and we sold it sight unseen in 6 hours at 10% more than the price.
Then your dream price, the dream. If we could ever get this,
we'll get this. Somebody offered 10% more. That's kind of what it looks like in our industry right now. And so there's some problems with that. First problem is it will shift the market. Maybe it can, go up straight up for the next 5 to 7 years.
Right.
Probably not. If it doesn't, the folks that have been really enjoying this business, despite the pandemic and everything else that we've all gone through as a country and as an industry, that will encourage some of these folks that were thinking about succession, retirement, exit planning. It will hasten their approach. It happens all the time. Happens every market cycle. That will happen. That won't necessarily create more sellers than buyers. So I don't know that it'll soften the market that much. Okay.
Right.
But it will soften the market. I mean, people won't be paying 9x EBITDA multiples and 3x top line, $200 million or $1 million revenue firms. I don't know that can happen forever. Who knows? I reserve the right to be wrong. So that's something to be thinking about right now. The other thing is a problem here with some of the valuations, that a bad deal for one side is a bad deal for everybody. So unless you're a private equity firm that has endless amounts of cash, or one of these large aggregators, you can make a bad deal as a buyer.
Right.
There's not a lot of bad deals as sellers going on out there right now, but there's a lot of bad deals towards the buyer. And helping the seller to understand a bad deal for the buyer is a bad deal for the seller, especially if there's any kind of earnout whatsoever. I mean, these need to be able to cash flow. The positive nature of this is that our default rates in the industry are less than 1.5%, even during the pandemic, of a financier coming in or someone buying another practice. So that's just incredibly low and speaks, to great lengths.
And you have financiers that your firm works with, correct?
Oh yeah, we've got a great list of trusted partners that we work with that can finance just about any deal, as long as it's a bankable deal.
So advisory DNA helps from every aspect of the M&A, the succession, the acquisition process, identifying who you are, right? And that's the free service, right?
Yeah, the free service is the first.
Your DNA.
3 steps is: who are you? What routes and pathways are available to you in the ecosystem that's out there? And then specifically, what firms or what people could be through the alignment and compatibility analytics factor, the best possible fits for you and your business, but customized to what you want. Not everybody doesn't want everything. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other aspects of it. It's the contractual aspects of it. It's making sure that you're addressing everything that you need. But you asked me a second earlier, what are some of those pitfalls? And the pitfalls are people that appear to be aligned who are not, that are getting into business together.
Right.
And it's like marriage. And so we have a high divorce rate in our country in business and in, betrothment. There's a reason for that, because the values, the cultures, the discipline within the practice are not always aligned. We're very good at finding that, not through a matching system, okay, through a process of art and science and guidance from a behavioral standpoint. So that's a pitfall. But sorry, to answer your question, to anybody in the country, I don't care if you're at 10 billion or at 20 million in assets. If you're interested in what's next for your firm, succession, it could be transition to, for better economics, better technology to another firm just to align with them. It could be exit planning and a true investment banking process of being able to figure out who is my best acquirer. We can help with that process, but it starts with an absolutely no cost to the advisor or to the firm process of discovery, pathway identification, and alignment analytics as to our best ideas.
So how do they get in touch with you? Where do you exist in the worldwide technology web?
Yeah, certainly on the World Wide Web, but through LinkedIn, certainly Brian Church. You can email me at Brian with an I at advisorydna.com. Email us at info@advisorydna.com, but visit us at advisorydna.com, our website. You get a little bit more color as to the platform and how we work with folks. And but we'd love to have a 15-minute conversation with anybody. I mean, that's not always scalable for us, but that's what we like to do, is to talk with financial advisors and firm owners.
That's great. Thank you for spending a little time talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you, man. Got a great podcast here. Love tuning into it. Thanks for having me on.
Until next time.